Julian adjusted the cuff of his bespoke tuxedo, his eyes scanning the opulent ballroom. His gaze settled on the woman walking slowly down the aisle, her train of white lace billowing gently behind her. Eleanor. She wasn't what anyone expected, least of all his friends, whose muffled snickers he could almost hear even above the string quartet, but she was exactly what he needed for this ridiculous, lucrative game. He allowed a faint, predatory smile to touch his lips. 6 months. $1 million. Piece of cake. He met her at the altar, her hand surprisingly firm in his. Her eyes, a deep shade of hazel, seemed to hold a quiet understanding that momentarily disarmed him. She didn't look like a woman who was about to be a pawn in a billionaire's childish wager. She looked calm. Too calm. The first month was a chore. Julian had prepared for it, of course. He'd structured his days around meetings and late-night calls, leaving Eleanor to wander the vast, empty rooms of his mansion. He ate out frequently, citing business. When he was home, he was polite, distant, and carefully detached. He'd imagined her clinging, needy, or perhaps desperately trying to win him over. Instead, she spent her time in the library, sometimes sketching, sometimes simply reading, enveloped in a silence that began to feel less like indifference and more like self-possession. One evening, he returned to find her playing the grand piano in the drawing room. He'd never even known it was tuned. The melody was haunting, complex, and utterly unexpected. It filled the air, weaving through the ornate chandeliers and rich tapestries, echoing a profound sadness. He paused in the doorway, unseen, listening. When she finished, the silence that followed felt heavy with unvoiced emotion. He cleared his throat, announcing his presence. She turned, her expression unreadable. "I didn't know you played," he said, the words sounding clumsy even to his own ears. "There's a great deal you don't know about me, Julian," she replied, her voice soft but direct, devoid of any shyness. She didn't elaborate. She simply closed the lid of the piano and walked away. The second month brought a subtle shift. Julian's friends, perpetually curious, would drop by, sometimes unannounced, to observe his progress. They'd make veiled jokes, snide remarks about his new life. Julian found himself, much to his own surprise, defending Eleanor, not overtly, but with a sharp look, a sudden change of subject, or a cold dismissal. He'd catch Eleanor's eye across the room, and she'd offer a small, almost imperceptible smile. A conspiratorial smile, he realized, as if they were in on a secret together, which, in a twisted way, they were. He started spending more time at home. Dinners became less of a formality and more of a conversation. Eleanor spoke of art, history, and philosophy with an intelligence that genuinely surprised him. She listened intently when he spoke of his business, offering insights that were surprisingly astute. He found himself looking forward to her quiet presence, to the way she held a teacup, or the thoughtful frown that creased her brow when deep in thought. One rainy afternoon, they were in the conservatory. Julian was pacing, frustrated by a deal gone sour. Eleanor was tending to a wilting orchid, her fingers gentle. "It's not the end of the world, Julian," she murmured without looking up. "Loss is often just a redirection." He stopped, staring at her. "Easy for you to say. You don't have empires to build." She finally looked at him, her hazel eyes piercing. "Everyone has an empire, Julian. Some are built of steel and glass, others of resilience and memory." Her words resonated, chipping away at his carefully constructed facade. He realized she wasn't just playing a role. She was genuinely herself, and it was a self that was far more captivating than he had ever anticipated. The bet, the $1 million, his friends' mocking laughter, it all began to fade into the background. By the 4th month, Julian was undeniably, irrevocably falling in love. It was a terrifying, exhilarating realization. He'd spent his life chasing wealth, power, and fleeting pleasures. He'd never known this kind of quiet contentment, this deep sense of connection. He watched her sleep one night, her breathing soft and even, and a wave of protectiveness washed over him. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her. He knew he had to confess, to lay bare his deception, and pray she would forgive him. The thought of the betrayal tearing them apart was agonizing. The 6th month arrived, heavy with unspoken truths. He had planned a special dinner, a quiet evening where he would finally confess everything. He would tell her about the bet, about his initial arrogance, and how deeply sorry he was. He would tell her that the money meant nothing, that she meant everything. He found her in the library, standing by the large window, looking out at the city lights. Her silhouette was framed against the darkening sky. "Eleanor," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "there's something I need to tell you, something important. It's about everything." She turned slowly, a faint smile playing on her lips. It wasn't her usual gentle smile. This one was knowing, almost sharp. "I know, Julian." His heart hammered against his ribs. You know, about the bet?" She nodded, taking a step closer. The air in the room suddenly felt colder, charged with an invisible current. "Yes, Julian. I knew about the bet from the very beginning. In fact, I ensured you'd choose me." A cold dread seeped into his bones. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes, usually so warm, now held a glint of something he hadn't seen before. Cold, calculated anger. "My real name isn't Eleanor Harding. It's Lena Petrova. Does that name ring any bells, Julian?" He stared, racking his brain. "Petrova. No, I don't." 20 years ago," she continued, her voice gaining a steely edge, "your father, Maxwell Vance, acquired a small, struggling textile factory in the suburbs. My family owned it. He promised to save it, to invest, to keep the workers employed. Instead, he stripped its assets, laid off everyone, and sold the land to a developer for a tidy profit. My father lost everything. He lost his health. He lost his will to live. He lost his life, Julian. He died a broken man, just 2 years after your father's acquisition." Julian felt the blood drain from his face. His father's ruthless business dealings were legendary, but he'd always dismissed them as aggressive, not destructive. I had no idea. That was years before I took over the company." "Oh, but you benefited, didn't you, Julian? Your trust funds, your inheritance, the very foundation of your empire, built on the bones of people like my family." Her voice was now a low, dangerous whisper. "I've spent 2 decades studying your family, your business, your weaknesses. I knew you were superficial. I knew you'd be looking for an easy mark for your little wager. I made sure I was that mark. I made sure my name was on the specific charity list your friend pulled from, the one he claimed was random. I ensured I was at that benefit dinner where you first saw me. Every conversation, every coincidence that led to us meeting, it was all orchestrated, Julian." He took a step back, reeling from the onslaught. "You mean, this entire marriage? It was all a lie? A plan?" His voice cracked. The love he felt, the vulnerability he'd allowed, felt like a gaping wound. "Yes," she said, her expression hardening further. "A plan. A very meticulous plan. To get close to you, to understand how to dismantle everything you hold dear, just as your family dismantled mine." "But the piano? The conversations? The way you looked at me?" he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "Was any of it real?" A flicker, a momentary hesitation, crossed her face. Then it was gone, replaced by an impenetrable resolve. "The acting, Julian, was superb. It had to be. I needed you to fall in love with me. It was crucial for the final act of my revenge." She turned and walked to a hidden panel behind a painting on the wall, pressing a discreet button. A small safe compartment clicked open. She pulled out a thick envelope. "You see," she continued, turning back to him, "I don't need your $1 million, Julian. I don't need your superficial friends. What I needed was access. Access to your company's inner workings. Access to your personal files. Access to your vulnerable points." She opened the envelope, revealing a stack of documents. "These are copies of your company's proprietary algorithms for your new AI venture, the schematics for your latest high-rise project, and the confidential data on all your primary investors. All meticulously gathered over the past 6 months, thanks to my close proximity. And these," she held up a few more papers, "are the forged documents proving embezzlement by your chief financial officer, whom I helped you hire, and whose loyalty, unbeknownst to you, lies with my own network." Julian stared, horrified. His empire, built on his father's legacy, now stood on the precipice of ruin. "They will be delivered to the press, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and your key competitors at dawn," she stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Your company will collapse. Your reputation will be in tatters. Your friends will desert you. Everything you value will be gone. He finally found his voice. You don't understand, Lena. I truly fell in love with you. I was going to tell you everything, beg for your forgiveness. She took a step closer, her gaze intense. Oh, I understand, Julian. I understand perfectly. You loved the Eleanor I created. You fell for the illusion. And that, I assure you, makes this all the more satisfying. Because now, when you lose everything, you'll know that the woman you loved, the woman you trusted, was the one who brought you down. She paused, then added, her voice dropping to a chilling whisper. And unlike your father, I leave no loose ends. Your empire, Julian, will not just be acquired, it will be dismantled, brick by painful brick, just like mine. She walked past him, leaving the envelope on a nearby table. The front door clicked shut. Julian stood alone in the library, the city lights outside twinkling like cruel, distant stars. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breath, the warmth of her touch, the melody of her piano, the quiet intelligence in her eyes. All were now twisted memories, poisoned by the devastating truth. The millionaire, who had sought to win a bet, had lost far more than $1 million. He had lost everything, and the woman he loved had not been Eleanor Harding at all. She had been the architect of his downfall, disguised as his salvation.